Good evening, everyone. Since we now have, well, I should inquire, do we have quorum officially?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do indeed have quorum with Councillor Osanek joining us right on time. Thank you so much. Currently absent from the meeting are Councillors Amos and Ball.
Thank you very much. So officially we'll start the meeting. I'll call it order. Approval of the agenda, please. Could I have a mover and seconder? First by Councillor Stevens, second by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Passes. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes from the Arts and Recreation Community Policies Committee meeting of 02/2024 held on Thursday, February 22, 2024 be approved. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Osanek, Councillor Ridge. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Disclosure, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have one delegation today. JP Longboat and Terry Lynn Brennan will present and speak to the committee regarding the Longboat Alliance, Arts Alliance. Just as a reminder, you have 5 minutes to speak. The members can ask 2 questions. If you want to come up to the podium right here, we'll give you a 30-second warning.
I got full control, okay. Yes, gotcha, okay. Okay, so, Sego, Wagwego. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight to share this vision, this vision that we've been carrying for the last number of years. And we find ourselves here in Kingston in consideration of Lemoyne Point Farm, and arriving at a time and a place where we can offer, well, let's have the presentation. So my name is JP Longboat. I have some 38 years of professional experience in the visual arts, theater, dance, choreography, storytelling. And I have worked with institutions such as the National Gallery of Canada, the National Arts Centre, and the Banff Centre for the Arts. I have been also raised in my cultural traditions. I'm Mohawk, Haudenosaunee, and I'm also, I sit with the Turtle Clan people. As we continue to deepen and broaden the conversation around offering a real and viable long-term alternative to habitat destruction and privileged development, you'll see that we serve so many sectoral mandates and values by way of solidifying and creating strong and equitable partnerships across the community. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the vision for Lodgepole Arts Alliance, and then talk a little bit about what we propose for programming and operations. So this is really a return to home. We can acknowledge that this is ancestral history of the region, especially Collins Bay is a place of ancestral Haudenosaunee homelands shared alongside the Anishinaabe. In terms of the vision we bring forward today, Canada lacks a publicly accessible Indigenous-owned Centre for Culture and Creativity where art, education, ecology, stewardship, and ceremony combine to role model leadership through reciprocity and reconciliation. We will care for this land. Kingston could offer a response to this need by supporting Lodgepole Arts Alliance to purchase Lemoyne Point Farm. The farm's current footprint represents a perfect answer to meeting this regional and national need. It has a natural old growth shoreline landscape where you could actually arrive in a traditional manner. We would host to be a host for a net zero presentation and performance venue while establishing an education and research repository space to house and caretake our repatriated cultural belongings. And this is a very real movement right now as we bring back our belongings from other institutions. Also, we bring a deep commitment to steward the holistic ecology of the location and expertly take care and manage the existing on-site heritage buildings for the enjoyment and identity of the city. In terms of operations and programming, the center is founded on ethical and sustainable land and water use, conservation through reestablishing original ecologies, with a special focus on propagating the full diversity of natural plant medicines and original food varieties that are indigenous. All direct stewardship and land-based work would be facilitated through the seasonal cycles, which forms the basis of our First Nations land use methodology and systems of knowledge and ceremonial legacies. Operations and programming will develop through full collaborations with Indigenous, for example, the Indigenous arts sector, educational and research partners, organizations, agencies, businesses, the corresponding communities, and of course the City of Kingston. We can align directly with the current city plan. We can look at an outdoor,
30 seconds.
We can look at an outdoor and an indoor vision. Outdoors to animate the landscape with artistic presentations, ceremony, and celebrations. We would undergo continuing research and development of traditional, sustainable Eastern woodland food production models, land-based education throughout the 4 seasons for the public, outdoor festivals, markets, culinary events. Indoor would be welcoming our cultural belongings home and to be reunited with the people, the expertise and knowledge within our art forms, and the spiritual teachings and ceremonial process.
That's 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Councillor Shaves. Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you, and 5 minutes is not enough time for you to explain all of these things. So I can't ask you to finish, but what I can do is ask you, what are the top 3 things that you want this committee to know?
The top 3 things is that we would bring our cultural knowledge, the understanding of ecological systems, to expertly steward the land from an ecological point of view, as well as the shoreline. That we would contribute to... Sure, yeah, go ahead.
For the purposes of this committee, Sego is going to go say Guego Terry Brennan speaking. Thank you, councillors, for inviting us. I think for the importance of what this farm, given its size, its desirability, and the ongoing impetus of the fact that that land itself is Indigenous land. It has never been in the public. It's only been in the privacy of one family through the generations, gifted by the British government. So for it to be repatriated back to an Indigenous organization I think is extremely positive for the city of Kingston to consider. That is a national, celebration, if you will. And the reality is, because of its size, again, it's meant to be a space of collaboration. So we are extremely excited to partner not only with other Indigenous organizations, because we do not want to promote pan-indigeneity, that we all do the same thing, because we don't, but it will be a refuge for Highway 15, for the Friendship Center and Language Nest, for Tipi Moza, for the Grandmothers Council. We have grandmothers who actually sit on our circle, our inner circle, are part of our decision makers. So we are integrated within the local community. But then also Loving Spoonful and corrections, and getting corrections in the Indigenous community at corrections back out to do art on the property is really a huge thing, and as well as developing agriculture, agricultural relearning to associate back with the repository aspect, as well as the artistic endeavor of the footprints that we want to take over. We're certainly not changing the landscape. This is the third point. We want to actually make use of each of the footprints that are currently there, so the 10 buildings, but without adjusting any of the old-scale forest. We'll use the land that's been farmed for farming in association with partners. And then the buildings can be used for residencies and for artistic endeavors.
Thank you. I'm allowed to have a second question. And I'm just wondering, so could you just tell us briefly, Lodgepole Arts Alliance, and you've mentioned about, Canada, and we're talking about Kingston, and so I'm wondering if you could just help us understand, how does Lodgepole Arts Alliance fit within the Kingston context? Because I think I'm understanding it's a wider organization. Can you just tell us sort of what that looks like? Thank you.
So JP and I have been involved for the last 5 years in a provincially wide process of looking at Indigenous artistic spaces. And what has come up from that is that there does not exist an Indigenous arts creative space anywhere in Ontario. And from our work across the country, JP has almost 40 years in the Indigenous arts sector. I have almost 40 years in culture, not arts necessarily, but in heritage sector as well. And the reality is that doesn't exist. There's nothing that's Indigenous owned across Canada. And we also do work internationally with international touring artists. And these places don't exist in Australia or New Zealand or South America. To have an Indigenous-owned land, controlled, owned, operated space doesn't exist. There has not been that level of repatriation and reclamation in Canada, let alone around the world. So that is part of the reason why this lodgepole evolved. We also have members from across the country that sit on our inner circle. So we have members from other provinces who have been along for the ride from the very beginning as supportive artists in different sectors. So we've got writers, we've got creative choreographers. It's all the media of the arts.
Thank you very much for coming to speak to us today. And I just want to confirm with the clerk, you will be sending out the slides.
Thank you. Through you, I was actually going to say that right after everyone else that wanted to speak, so you took the words right out of my mouth, Councillor Stephen. I will be circulating to this to all members of the committee, and they are available for the public if they so wish as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's a really interesting proposal. Councillor Stephen asked my questions, but my only further question at this point would be that I feel like if we're to examine this proposal in greater detail, that it would need to be an ongoing conversation. So I was just wondering if the contact information for the presenters is available, aside with the slides too, of course. And that we could continue this conversation in the future. I think that was the question. I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Okay. Yes, that would be quite wonderful. I feel a little bit disappointed in that. Just trying to fit everything. I'm quite flustered in this situation. This is not the best situation for me to be able to present the vision, the total vision, because it is a vision. It's a vision that's holistic and takes into account, of course, the land, but also the space to actually begin to reclaim and rebuild our cultures. Of course, there's all kinds of initiatives happening around healing, but this is not a healing center. This is very much a center of empowerment for us to begin to actually sort of reclaim our voice in the way that's necessary. And it's so important to this region because as Haudenosaunee people and as Anishinaabe people, we have that history of partnership and actually working together. That also, those local interrelations also need to be reestablished as well and rebuilt. along with the general public as well, because that's what this is really about. It really is about sharing our culture. Ultimately, it's about sharing what we can bring to the community.
Thank you so much for that. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'm looking forward to getting that information and then talking further about it. So thank you again.
We did do a presentation to to another committee a few weeks ago, which I believe that they were also going to send a letter forward in terms of that presentation and some of what they received and some of the ideas that they had going forward. So hopefully that's also available to you at some point.
It's Councillor Chaps, you sat on that Arts and Culture Committee. Is it right for us to ask what the status of that letter is at this stage?
I think it's sitting with the chair of that committee right now.
Thank you.
And just to confirm, shaves would be nice. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll forgive you this time.
Thank you.
Don't worry. You're not the first. Won't be the last. Councillor Sanik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, and thanks very much for this presentation. I had heard about it when you presented to the Arts Advisory Committee, and one of my worries was like, how big will this place be? And so I was like happy to learn that you're going to be using the existing buildings that are right now at Lemoyne Point Farm. For the parking lot, do you think, I don't even know what type of driveway or parking are at those buildings, but if some of the events we're going to have lots of people, do you think we could use those permeable pavers? Like, I just don't want Lemoyne Point Farm, if this goes forward, right, to become an asphalt parking lot. So can we be sensitive to that?
Yeah, I think of even if the idea of approaching things from an ecological perspective, that would not be something that would even be considered. We were looking at a number of different ways to get people on site, even a community shuttle, for example, right? Something like this where we would be able to bring people to the site or get people to the site without making those kind of concessions in terms of, big pavements or big plots or big things over our natural lands, for sure. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just also say, like, for the lighting too, when it gets to that point, right? If like the lighting can be focused like inward on the structures and not outward, because we all know Lemoyne Point is, I don't know, very crowded, right? It's landlocked. We need more space, and so, and we don't even like. Hopefully, this will go forward. I would just don't want the entire forest then to be lit up, but have it facing inward to the structures.
Yes, for sure. I think. Thank you for your question about local, because this is really where what we would be doing is operating local. We do have a broader vision, and we will work broader in a broader context, because I know people will want to come to this place to present their work and to share their stories. That's what it's about also, but it's also about the health and well-being of this community. It will be a jewel in your kind of your ecological proposals putting forward and your strategic plan. We fit within all sections of the strategic plan, offering what we can and contributing what we can across all of those areas. Yeah.
Super. Thanks so much.
Councillor Stephen, can you take the chair, please?
I have the chair. Councillor Shapes, go ahead. You have 2 questions.
Thank you. I may only need one. Nice to see you two in person. As mentioned, I had the privilege of seeing your full presentation virtually through the Arts and Cultural Advisory Group. Now, in regards to that, I believe it was later in your presentation, which we probably didn't get to today, but as mentioned, will be shared with the rest of the committee members. Could you talk about financing? Because I believe you talked about funding for this program, or even possible purchase of Lemoyne Point Farm, maybe aiding the city. So can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, well, I think initially right away, if we're able to have a go-ahead in terms of the support for the city, that's when our capital campaign will begin, and that's when we'll have something to specifically go after. If we know exactly what we're going after, then we can definitely begin to focus our efforts in terms of that. We already have roughly $500,000 in terms of already waiting for us through Canadian Heritage in terms of land investment. So we do have some base. But in terms of operations, we have a history within public funding right across all levels, municipal, provincial, and federal. And that's one of the ways we will be able to operate, but as well as offering program that would be applicable to ticket sales, conferences, festivals. So it will also be somewhat of a generating economically as well. The idea of also growing food and making that somewhat of I'm going to say profitable, but at least being able to sustain that as well. What else?
Yeah. We also have philanthropic donors. So actually our final number right now is closer to 1,300,000 that we have access to. But we also have other philanthropic donors waiting in the wings because we're looking for that final number, which is eluding all of us right now. So, but I think financially that's not necessarily a concern that we have, which should hopefully put some thoughts to rest about the purchase for ownership on behalf of Lodgepole.
Thank you. I know when this was brought up during the advisory committee, I wasn't very clear in certain answers because there was none to be shared at that time. So all I can say is that the city is still interested in purchasing the property, and we'll have to see how negotiations go. Okay. Thank you.
I return the chair.
Thank you. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
You want to go?
We have no briefings today on the agenda, so we'll move into business. First up, we have community garden policy updates. Do we have staff to present?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think very brief, I will not, it's obviously a process that has been a while coming and very much an interdepartmental endeavor, updating the community gardens policy. In the report, we have outlined some of the key, some of the process of how the policy has been updated over the last, I would say about a year, with lots of community consultation with all the different garden groups and the broader community. So in the report, we've summarized some of the themes and how we have been addressing those themes either in the policy or how we are going to kind of continue to work through community garden establishments through both the kind of interdepartmental project team, but also working with Loving Spoonful, who is the garden kind of the coordinator for the garden coordinators in the community. It is an amalgamation of the previous, or of the community garden policy and also the community orchard and edible forest policy. So we're really hopeful that this will provide some more streamlined approach for community gardens. And we've also really tried to kind of ensure that there is some nimbleness in the policy as well, where we can as a city. So I think we have staff from Rec and Leisure, from Public Works, and myself here to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Any questions from the committee? Councillor Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. First of all, just I want to thank staff for the process and increasing the consultation and taking that community feedback from the previous time it was meant to be introduced, and really going back to the document and policy and working with that feedback is really appreciated, especially by many of my constituents. I have a question because insurance is a key factor in consideration in the policy, but I don't remember reading anywhere in the document how much the cost of the insurance would be for a garden space. Yeah, can staff provide me with a number or like a range in terms of what the insurance may be?
Ms. Norgard.
Thank you, and to you, Mr. Chair. That is a really excellent question. I think I will kind of share in general that as a city, we are actually kind of looking at insurance for various community activities as a whole, because I do think it's popping up in different kind of areas. Specifically for gardens right now, and we actually reviewed kind of the current cost. Insurance ranges, I would say, approximately between $800 and $1,200 per year per garden. So it's quite a steep expense. We do support community gardens with grants. That does include as insurance costs if that is needed. But I think we've definitely provided opportunities to remove that barrier, but we also are looking at a broader kind of insurance question as a lot of different kind of community services groups are dealing with insurance and partners. I hope that helps.
Councilor Rich?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, thank you so much for that answer. That helps to substantiate it in my mind a bit more in terms of potential barriers to access. And I agree with Director Nordegraff's statement about insurance being an issue throughout for multiple community groups, and I know for the city as well with regards to snow removal, amongst other things. So okay, so just to follow up on that, would the insurance coverage then be presumably for approximately for a minimum of $5 million coverage? Because that seems to be the standard nowadays, just for clarity's sake.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. That was it for me, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. This is a big improvement. You've taken these two policies, you've merged them together, you've streamlined it, so thank you to staff for all the work on that. My question is with respect to just overall barriers and the community experience with trying to have a community garden. I just want to know staff's opinion. Do you think that we have set the community up for success while also sort of maintaining municipal boundaries that, as the corporation of the City of Kingston, we need to do? Like, do we think that this is an improvement and user groups will find success?
Ms. Norgard.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think as staff across all the different departments, and I think the Rec and Leisure Department has done most of the heavy lifting before the Community Development and Wellbeing Department was established, but I think there's definitely still some room for improvements. I think especially looking at like continuing to work on application process, communication, explaining sometimes why things are challenging. And again, I've touched on that, but and frankly, even I think all of us, as from a staff's perspective, all the different steps that are involved in making sure we balance health and safety, liability of having a garden on city property versus, you know, the social and environmental benefits of a garden are not that straightforward. And I think it's really about explaining why some things are challenging. For instance, why we are testing soil, why we are asking for insurance, why we are sometimes need to look at heritage even depending on the location. So long story short, I definitely think we have addressed and explained what we can and cannot do at this point. We do have some ideas moving forward on looking, and we've addressed that in this report as well, looking at maybe some sites that we can predetermine as garden sites, pilots with water, working with our facilities team on getting more opportunities for rain barrels and more kind of water. And so and there's definitely still room for improvement, but I think by bringing everybody around the table, improving process, and having an open dialogue with the community, I'm hopeful that we'll get more successful gardens in place.
Councillor
Thank
Stephen?
you. This gives me a lot of hope moving forward, and I so appreciate that you're identifying that we're not done. Like, this is a great starting point. We finally got some structure here and a framework, and that you're really looking towards moving the community forward. So thank you very much for that, and again, for all the engagement and those who contributed. I think that Kingston's looking pretty good right now. Thanks.
Councillor Stanek, would you like an opportunity?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. My only question is about soil testing. How expensive is soil testing?
Thank you. To you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have the exact numbers. I know we obviously have an environmental team that is very helpful in this process. So I unfortunately cannot give you a specific number. I'm happy to get some feedback from my environmental colleagues on their experience. I know I think we do receive, I think as a community, a lot of questions around soil testing and the barriers and why we require soil testing. But obviously we do, again, want to balance health and safety and the ability to grow food in our community. We also obviously do provide opportunities for raised beds. So I think we do have lots of alternatives. And again, by potentially looking at some predetermined locations, we as a city could actually look at budgeting for some soil testing for those dedicated sites. So again, happy to come back with some numbers. I don't want to do justice to my environmental teams.
Okay, and so soil testing, is that only needed if you don't do raised beds? Or you have to do it even with raised beds?
I love having a team of experts next to me. So through you, Mr. Chair, no, only in grounds require soil testing.
In ground, okay. All right, we had feedback from some members, and it seemed like soil testing, it seems based on their comments that it was really expensive, and I just wondered if that's even more expensive than the $800 to $1,200 in insurance each year. So thank you.
Thank you. Apparently I don't have any questions left to ask because I was also wondering why soil testing was needed if there was on a raised bed geotextile membranes being used. So, and also regards to the cost for insurance, because I heard that was a bit of an issue with a lot of the associations, groups that were using this. But I was surprised to see within the report the number of departments which are involved in this process of approval, and realizing maybe how or why it takes so long to get it approved if you have to go through 12 different departments. So, but nice to hear that it is being streamlined. And thank you to everyone for the report. Thank you. Do we have any public online?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm we currently do not have any members of the public online or in the chamber.
Okay. So on that note, I need a mover and seconder for this. So Councillor Stephen, Councillor Ridge, all those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. On to our second agenda item, Community Development Neighborhood Activation Fund. Do we have a staff member to present? Ms. Norabrath, nice to see you again.
Hi. I will promise not to talk all night. Thank you so much for the opportunity to also bring this info report to this committee. I'm actually really excited about this initiative, and really the purpose to bring this to the committee is for awareness of this initiative and the vision of the initiative moving forward. Again, I really want to commend the Rec and Leisure team for initiating this back in 2023. When kind of a new role was created, the community development coordinator that has actually created this pilot in 2023, which really is the vision of this neighborhood activation fund is to create low barrier initiatives for neighborhoods. So, neighbors, streets, community groups, ethnocultural groups, to create events and activities that connect people. Again, these are not the big events that we do through special events or through arts and culture. These are really kind of smaller scale initiatives that connect people, create a greater sense of belonging. We have already piloted in 2023 and continue to do so in 2024 these initiatives. There are 3 areas. One is kind of very small scale street parties or block parties, and we use the funds to support road closure costs, again, insurance costs, it will be a bit of a theme, and other kind of permits required. We also have kind of more community neighborhood level events, for instance, small kind of open mic events or community events in parks. And then we have the opportunity for pop-up movie nights. In the report, we've identified some activities that have already taken place, and the intent of the dollars that have been approved in the city's operating budget for 2024. And we've also identified our hopes and dreams for this fund moving forwards, and the connection with the existing fee waiver program and other funding programs that we have as a city. So again, this is really an opportunity to build neighborhoods, connections, build neighborhood resilience, and allow for very small amounts of funds to create hopefully bigger impact in neighborhoods. And obviously we will be looking at measurements and reporting, and we'll keep the committee and council updated on kind of next steps for this fund. So happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I love this. I am so excited about this whole neighborhood level and street level community. I think this is brilliant, so thank you. I'm wondering if a group were to do like a block party, and I think this was in the report, so forgive me, I don't remember, but are they allowed to use that as a fundraiser for something else? Like, for example, we're having a block party, we're accepting food donations for the food bank, or we're raising money for the Humane Society. Is that something that's considered?
I'm kind of looking at Amy a little bit here too. So the intent is not necessarily to raise like funds for, I don't know, something like for-profit. Again, I think we're trying to be as nimble as possible. The intent of the fund is to bring people together, to maybe like touch on some priority kind of areas as the city. I mean, I think if people are asked to bring like a donation to the food bank, for instance, I don't think that would be an issue. It's not necessarily the intent of the funds, but I think it's if that kind of helps to build community and build connections. The key thing is it could not be, for instance, an avenue to then raise funds for, let's say, a for-profit activity or no like gambling or those kind of things. But absolutely, I think as long as the intent is to, again, gather people around in the neighborhood and build connections, and it's not going to still prevent people from not access. So raising, for instance, a fee for an event would not be possible, for instance. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be my feedback then is having something in the application or the policy or whatever, just to identify that the purpose is what you described. And if you want to tie in like something for the food bank or, specify nonprofits, or I'll leave it to you to sort of work out what that would look like. But I think that might be a useful addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Are we still void of any viewers?
I can confirm there are currently no members of the public present.
Thank you. Do we have a mover and seconder for this?
Mr. Chair, there is no recommendation. This is an information report.
I stand corrected. We'll move on to our next item of business, which is the sports field service level comparison. Do we have Ms. Sanchusi? Is that your introduction? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The staff was asked to go back and complete a review of the sports field service levels in comparison with other municipalities. We surveyed 18 municipalities. It took us several tries, but we finally got some answers from 10 different municipalities. We sought information on sports field lining, sports equipment, storage for user groups, washroom facilities, staffing allotments, field and diamond inventories, season duration, and covered dugouts. This report really is a discussion of some of the options of service levels in addition to showing the comparisons, but a review of some of the options of service level increases which could happen. This is meant to be a discussion point and get some feedback from the committee. Staff will then take a look at incorporating that feedback and feedback from the user groups into a report that will go to council following this.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wondered if what we see tonight has already been shared with the user groups. I know you said you're going to be meeting with the user groups after. Like, have they seen this other than if they hit the city website today and look at this report?
Do we have a taker for that? Ms. Sanchuti. Oh,
You go ahead.
Through you, Chair. It was shared on June 24th after our original meeting that we were reviewing all the items that Director Sanchucci pointed out, and we outlined all the details in the report that went forward to the committee.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, are there any showstoppers? Like, I found it hard to, after I read all of it, it's a lot of stats, but not all municipalities responded. And I find it, I don't know, so that's how it is. I kind of thought there might be some higher level organization where all the staff and all the municipalities get together and can discuss. We just have to send out surveys to other cities to collect the info. And if they don't respond, we have to try to chase it down. I don't know. I just kind of thought that Parks and Recreation, there'd be some big overarching association of all the municipalities, and it would be easier to gather, the comparisons. But I guess not, eh?
Ms. Sanchusi.
We wish it was that easy. I think what you will find is every municipality is set up differently. So when you will find in one municipality may have sports fields, some may have separated out, similar to we do, the user groups from the actual maintenance. It's really difficult to get to a municipality and to get to the right people that have all of the different aspects of that. So there are groups, yes, that deal with sports fields, and some of them deal with maintenance, and some of them deal with user groups, but it's very difficult to get municipalities that all have similar ideas of how they do that and get the right people to get that information from. Often we were getting responses from 2 or 3 people from different municipalities because it fell into a number of different areas.
Okay, thank you. I know this is an information report and there's no recommendations, but then like I don't know what to do with this information. Like I don't know if we can say, well, look, like there's two municipalities that where the municipality does their own lining on the court on the ball diamonds, and we don't. We make the user groups do it. Like I guess I'll just like have to wait for the user groups to look at this report next time they complain, like in the spring or whenever they complain, and say, well, here's what all the other municipalities are doing, like read it and come back to me with what you want. Because reading the report, like, I don't know what to do with it.
After conference, Ms. Santucci.
Thank you, and through you. I just wanted to verify, so when we first had the meeting that was booked for June, there was a report. The next report got revised and it had some options in it. I just wanted to make sure everyone has that same report. Is that correct? Yes?
I do
Okay.
believe so.
Okay, so the intent of that was to provide some options and really get some discussion from this group about whether those options were something that this group was interested in looking for staff to look into in more detail, that we could then bring back to council and look at what those options are and what the fees and services would be like that would have to go along with those. And those would come back to council in a separate report. But again, the goal really was, is there comments and feedback from this group that we need to incorporate into that? And I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, Councillor Osanek. I'm hoping I did.
Okay, thank you. I saw Councillor Ridge nod his head. So Councillor Ridge, send me an email what report I've missed. I'm behind the 8 ball. I was up till 2:30 in the morning. I'm behind the 8 ball. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I am so slow at operating Zoom. Okay, so for those reading along with the report at home, on page 5 of the report, there's service level improvement options, which include a few costs, which so like service level improvement for rectangular fields, Class A fields and diamonds. So my feedback would be that I would need to hear from the user groups with regards to the potential cost impacts that it would have, if there are any, for them, considering last year there with the increase in costs, I did hear quite a bit from several user groups about that increase in costs and the potential effects that it would have on their organizations. I do think that there are some in here that are really attractive. So for example, option 1B on page 5 of the report, the rectangular field lining where it contracted out one time 150,000 capital and annual operating increase of 275. I think that there's potential there. So that would be my feedback for that particular part of the report. I'm just looking. Oh, service level. Basic equipment to all user groups is another one. That's on page 7 of the report. And yeah, so there's some stuff here that I think is really good, but it would be, I think, ultimately dependent upon the feedback from the user groups with regards to cost impacts. I really do appreciate this report. I just want to, as an aside, I know how difficult it can be to reach out to multiple municipalities. I've had to do that a few times in my previous occupation, and the information is really clearly presented. I love numbers, so I love looking at the. Councillor Osanek's laughing. But I do think it's interesting and shows through comparators, for example, field and diamond inventory comparison on page 11. Just how, for the size of the municipality that we have, how many diamonds we have. in comparison to other municipalities of similar or larger populations. And I do know that those diamonds can be for specific use for one sport or for multiple sports. But I thought I was actually quite surprised at the inventory size. So I hope that feedback is useful for staff. I'm happy to talk more about some of the other options, but again, I would think we would just need to have a bit more input from the user groups with regards to what their thoughts are and potential cost effects with regards to that. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rich, and I will assure you that Councillor Osanek was not alone in your previous statement. Thank you. Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I guess my feedback kind of comes down to, it echoes what we've already heard about the user groups and how it feels like this is one of those situations where the city is almost the middleman, like we're the conduit. So the user groups, if they want increased service levels from the city, that's fine. What that means is it's going to cost more money, which means we have to cover those costs somehow, which is either increased budget or we charge the user fees. And that makes sense, right? You're getting more service, you have to pay a little more, but you're also not paying to do the lines in that other way that you had been doing it previously. So I support, if this is what the user groups want and the fee structure reflects that and they are in agreement because there's been great communication and they understand that the reason the fees are going up is because we're providing this service now, I think it's great. So I support this in theory. I don't have any comments on the options provided. I think ultimately it comes down to what they want and that our fee structure reflects that. And again, as I said before, the communication piece. So people are happy, we're happy, everybody wins.
Thank you. Is that it?
I have the chair. Councillor Shaves.
Thank you for taking that without me asking, but thank you. That was my anticipation. And thank you for the report. I have used some of these fields before and still do in some aspects. My first question is, was this initiated due to staff inquiring or is this coming from user groups?
Director Santucci.
The review of how we compare to the service levels definitely came from council. It was a council directive for us to go back and take a look at those levels. Pulling together some of the options was just looking at where we were lower in some of our service levels than some of the other communities and putting together some options to get us to a level where we've heard from user groups in previous meetings that they would like to see more services offered.
Councillor Shaves.
Thank you. In regards to lining, I'm just wondering, I know there are different fields, rectangular and diamond are different uses, but how often would the lining be completed for those fields?
Director Santucci.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It really will depend. On the diamonds, the goal of the diamonds would be to provide the chalk and the equipment that the user groups would use themselves, just because the lines are different depending on what they're playing and what age group it is and all of that stuff. On the rectangular fields, it could be once a week. It could be more often if we have tournaments. It will depend on the season and how the growth has been on the grass on that. So there are a lot of variables that come into how often those fields get lined at different times of year and based on the usage of that field.
Okay, thank you. And further on how often would the fields be checked to confirm the equipment was there, especially the ball diamond, someone doesn't take a base or something, or netting for the rectangular fields? Thank you.
Director Santucci.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Typically, we have people at the diamonds and at the fields every day. It would likely be checked every day or every couple days. There is a process that would be in place that if something was missing, they could call in order to get some of that stuff moved over or have additional supplies somewhere nearby. I think that would be a bit of a work in progress that we would need to figure out that entire process as we went through.
Councillor Shaves.
Thank you. Because my next question was, for last minute, someone arrives at the ball diamond or wherever field a half hour beforehand and something's missing. Would there be a procedure? Because it's not a lot of time beforehand, because most aren't there an hour before, but usually about a half hour or so.
Director Santucci.
Yeah, definitely there would be a procedure. A lot of the bigger places, I'm sure that we would have storage somewhere else on site that we could provide access through a lock code or something. For some of the smaller fields, it probably would be that we would need to look at getting that stuff to them. But again, I don't have a procedure written on that. That would be something we would need to develop as we went on.
Okay. You did ask for feedback, so there it is. Last question. It's in regards to the C-grade fields, because I know this is more or less tagged with A and B, but field maintenance. Are they also included in the maintenance schedule? Because I worry about field conditions as neighborhood residents will use these fields, probably more than organizations. So will these C-graded fields be incorporated with the maintenance schedule?
Through you, Ms. Chair. They definitely are in the maintenance schedule. The levels of maintenance are not as high as they may be for an A's field. They don't have irrigation, so they are not getting that level of water that some of the A fields would be getting. But they are included in our maintenance program and do receive maintenance.
I understand, but the irrigation portion is quite expensive for something that's more localized, but more like reseeding and resurfacing, filling in the potholes here and there, because there are a few. Trust me, I can say so. But thank you for the report.
I return the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, are we still void of any audience members?
There are no members of the public present.
Thank you. We shall move on, considering that was also information session or presentation, no need to vote. We have no motions on the agenda. We have no notices of motion. We have no, is there any other business? Seeing none. There's no correspondence on the agenda. Date of our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 23rd at 6 p.m. Do I have a mover and seconder for adjournment? Councillor Rich, Councillor Stephen. All those in favor? See you in a couple of months. Enjoy the rest of your summer.